In 2006, my wife and I moved to North India, and in North India, there we got to work under Jeff Sundell and be a part of movement like ministry there. So really, that's where we learned the majority of what we do today. We really haven't changed that much. It's the principles are still the same, the strategy is the same, the tools have changed a little bit, but we're very thankful for our time there. We spent 3 years there, just under Jeff and just learning and, trial and error and, seeing the Lord do some neat things. And that's the best way to learn, I guess.
Okay, well, and now you're based in Athens?
Right.
What brought that move about?
Yeah, that was a crazy move. Just the way our organization works. That first term that we spent in India was up, and we had to go back to the States and make a transition. And just as we were making the transition, just praying, Lord, where would you have us go? And really open to going anywhere, just kind of left that up to him. And, we're usually pretty big on outside affirmation and confirmation. And in India's case and in coming here, we got phone calls that we weren't expecting. And somebody had heard that we were in the process and wanted to know if we would consider coming and joining the team here. The individual at the time really had a vision for the city, but he saw that most people were only focused on one particular people group or language. And so he saw just a lot that were falling, between the gaps, so to speak. And so he really wanted somebody to come in with more of just a wide focus, and let's just reach whoever we can reach, and just let the strategy and the fruit dictate where we go. So really, it was a real blessing, to be able to come in and just have that kind of freedom to just really go wherever the Lord sent us. And yeah.
So how did you discern where the fruit was in Athens?
Yeah, just a lot of really our initial 3 years were all about trying to find people that were already believers, but were kind of on the fringe, and nobody really had ever given them a chance to really see the Lord at work in their ministry and through their lives, and then also just broad seed sowing, looking for people of peace and trying to find people that were open to the gospel and open to having conversations, and then once you go through that process, just filtering down and finding the ones that are really passionate about reaching their people.
And were some of those people Greeks?
Not yet. Really, just this past year is where we've really been able to focus on Greeks. There is a small contingent of solid Greek evangelicals that are here, and there are around 30 or 40 churches, and so we're kind of known in some of those circles, and really within that network, just trying to be a blessing to them, and haven't until this year really been able to focus on the Greek side. But that certainly is something we're excited about now. And just an example of how in Europe everything crosses over: immigrants, refugees, Europeans. Our first Greek that came to faith through a Congolese brother that we're working with.
No
and
way.
So you just never know how and where and when it's going to come. So it's fun.
So what a French-speaking Congolese African has led a Greek person to Christ.
Yeah. So we'll in just a few weeks we'll start the 411. We'll start the training in her home, and she's already got the vision to reach out. She lives in an area of town where there's not any Greek evangelical churches, and so just really casting that vision that she's the first one, and we're excited about that.
Well, as it picks up, we'd like some Greek missionaries to Australia. My home city of Melbourne is the third largest Greek city in the world.
We know, there's lots of Greeks there for sure. Yeah, hey, who knows? Who knows what the Lord might do?
I'm sure everyone in Athens has a cousin in Melbourne.
Everybody knows somebody in Melbourne or in New York or Chicago, one or the other.
So what were the doors that opened then? Where did you see fruit? How did that come about?
Yeah, just again, just being open to honestly any believer that we meet. Mm-hmm. One of the first questions is, well, hey, tell me what you're passionate about. And just, with enough conversation, we start to hear some common themes and some, certain individuals. And it's guys that kind of already had some understanding that, man, they wanted to be used by the Lord. They just didn't know how, or nobody had given them a chance yet. And so we began to really see initially through Iranians and Afghans, just brothers that we met that either came to faith in country or came to faith on their refugee journey or came to faith here in Greece. It's kind of, they all happen. And so regardless, though, some of them were, 10 years believers, and some had only been a believer for a year. And, just the ones that were open to, some leading and some direction, and say, hey, man, if you really want to be used by the Lord, let's meet. And, let me show you a few things, and let's just see what happens. And really our first 3 years, we really walked away with 4 key guys, a couple of Iranians, an Afghan, and a Pakistani, and brother. And then now we're working with in an African stream and an Iraqi Kurdish stream. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, I just about tear up anytime I hear of Iranians come to Christ. We have a lot of Persian friends, and what we're seeing in the last decade we haven't seen in probably 2,000 years.
Yeah, it's really an unprecedented time, I think, and you hear that from a lot of people, but that's certainly the experience that we're seeing here. God is certainly at work among Muslims, and Persians in particular. There's just something about the culture that they're coming out of, just where they are as a society, that they come and God's already at work. He's either at work or he's not, and we're not really finding. For one, it's not that difficult to engage. And 2, it's really not that difficult to find those that God's really at work in.
Well, why don't you tell us the story of one of those 4 brothers, how you connected, and then how you helped, train and mobilize them?
Sure. Yeah. One of the Iranian brothers that we're working with, we'll call him S. And he came out of Iran. I had an experience with the Lord in Iran, and was actually one of the reasons he had to leave, just through reading the Quran and getting a hold of a Bible, and just some of the verses that he read in the Quran about Isa Masih. And he goes and he tells his mom, "You'll never believe what I just read." And she told him not to tell anybody and never read it again. And so he knew at that point, he needed to get out. So he started the process of becoming a refugee and making the same journey that refugees are making today, right now. And he came to Greece about 8 years ago, and I met him 5 years ago. And those 3 years, prior before I met him, he, by God's grace, he had gotten involved in in an evangelical church, and he was very passionate, very bold with the gospel. And they gave him a job as a janitor in the church building, gave him a room to do ministry out of. But that's really where it kind of ends at that point. They were pretty controlling, and he didn't have a lot of freedom in ministry. He was thankful for what he had. And so, when I met him, just with anybody, we're going to ask and see what their passions are. He just began to share, really without knowing the terminology, as he was describing his ministry. He was laying out T for T. And so it was just neat to just sit there and listen. And it's, the whole time he's talking, I'm like, I want to work with this guy. So just, it took some time. We just wanted to build that relationship. It's one of the things with Persians in particular, to really build that trust and that relationship where they're really going to invite any counsel or direction or leadership. But man, once that started, this brother is just really, he's seen God at work, and he's got generations of disciples, and his ministry right now is just a reflection of the refugee reality. With the exception of 3 people, everybody's gone. Everybody that he's led to the Lord are now somewhere else in Europe, and which is great, on one level, because you're sending out, trained believers that are passionate about the gospel. Not all of them, but you just pray that a percentage of those that are trained actually do it, as is the case anywhere. And so, then just the reality of how do you follow up with those guys, and how do you help them get to church where they are? How do you help them reach out to, the people that they have influence with there. And that's just been another dynamic that you can look at it as a negative that people are moving through so quickly, but really we just see it as a value. It kind of forces you to have a train and send mentality. It forces you to really be strategic in what you get to first and how quickly you want disciples to experience healthy church. Yeah. And because you never know how long you're going to have with them. And S's ministry is a perfect example of that. So yeah, he's kind of back to square one, and just doing broad seed sowing, looking for people of peace. And he's got a couple of key disciples that he takes with him every day. They're in the parks and in the camps sharing and just looking for people
and their focus typically will be amongst refugees.
Yeah, primarily. Most are going to be among refugees. So it, again, there's going to be some crossover. Just naturally it happens. But, for the most of them, yeah, it's just because the camps obviously are refugees. Most of the parks are refugees. And, just the reality is changing here, and that people are here longer now. This used to be just a very quick transitional country. Well, now it's not. You're looking at least a year, maybe 2 years with people before they move on, typically, depending on when you meet them in their process.
So you've gone to Greece saying, Lord, where is the responsiveness?
Mm-hmm.
Both in the harvest, but also with existing believers to train and mobilize people like S.
Right.
And you've found that fruit in the early years amongst refugees. And so how has that refugee ministry developed? What have you learned along the way about how to do it well and how God's at work?
Yeah, we got a couple hours. There's just so much. There's so much that it really is different. Working in a South Asian context, and then working in the U.S., and then working among refugees. Everywhere's a little bit different. But man, we just deal with things that typically wouldn't even have to think about. Just the movement of people, refugee needs, just all of that, and then how do you balance that with really staying focused on getting to church? But when the needs are all around you and ever changing. Yeah. Anyways, but for just to kind of bring it down to where we see God at work and how we're seeing groups form, churches form, disciples and generations. Really as quickly as possible, I want to get it in the hands of the refugees. Meaning, if I'm the one doing the majority of the sharing, we're going to have problems because I was never Muslim. I didn't come out of an Islamic culture. I can learn the language, but at the end of the day, I'm never the best one. And so to really, as quickly as we can, put evangelism, discipleship, group, church in the hands of believers really is the key. And it just to push that as quickly and as fastly as we can. And that's where we're seeing the majority of our fruit is some of these key brothers that we're working with, really just giving them a model and some tools that they can use and just let them run with it. And now really on the back end, just as an encourager, as a coach, cheerleader, whatever you want to call it, just really kind of try to push these guys. And then now as they're seeing generations pop up from that, walking them through gen mapping and, what all that looks like, downstream.
So they're already seeing generations of new disciples and new churches.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And these are Afghans and Iranians and Arabs and Congolese.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And again, it's almost not fair because we have so many people coming to us. We've got this huge network to work within, and it's ever changing. It's not the same. Whether people say there's 500,000 or 1 million immigrants and refugees in Greece, it doesn't matter because it's in 6 months from now, there's going to be new ones come and some have moved on. So it's like you always have this constant stream of new people to reach out to and to see where God might be at work in. Running a refugee center that allows us to process and look for people of peace very quickly.
So that's how you connect, or one way you connect with refugees. You have a center, and what do you do there?
Yeah, that's one of the really, and that's mostly among our Iranian, a little bit Afghan, but mostly Iranian. We actually run a refugee center where we provide a food bag and 2 days where we provide a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. We're glad that we can do that. But I'll be honest, there's lots of other organizations that do aid work a lot better than we do.
Yeah.
We're happy to be able to do what we do.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, what we're excited about is we'll have, 200, 250 refugees a day that come and are sitting around tables, and our nationals are sitting there with them, just looking for people of peace. And just, that's the thing. They know the questions to ask. They know, they can sit around a table and within a matter of a minute, or two, they know really who's interested. And so then they're able to say, hey, why don't you come back at 4? Let's meet up for tea.
Yeah.
And that's where they can really have some more dialogue and really get to it there. And then all of the guys that we're working with, their schedules are completely free and open.
Mm-hmm.
So they're able to not only do that, but they can also partner with other, refugee centers where they just get to go volunteer their time and, be a blessing to that organization. But then also the whole time they're looking for people of peace. S, who we talked about before, he does that with a Catholic organization here. So they're happy to have him because he speaks the language, and but he's constantly looking for people of peace out of that, which is great. And then we've just got freedom here to be in the camps. Not me, but our national brothers do, to be in the camps, and because they look like a refugee. And then a lot of the refugees that are here, they don't want to be in the camps all day. They don't want to be in their apartments all day because they're really crammed in there. So they're out on the street, and there's just natural places where they congregate in parks and things like that. So we get into those parks, and you could just sit. You could have 100 conversations in a day if you wanted. Just kind of be looking for those that God's at work in.
So it's just the basic principles of connecting broadly with people. Wide sort of sharing, abundant sharing of the gospel, and then the guys you've trained have got simple, contagious methods of, getting the gospel out, making disciples, and forming churches.
Right.
And so what does church look like then? Because these are transient people. Can you think of an example or just describe what it would be like if we're a part of that group?
Yeah, so it's, we've got the healthy church model, the healthy church circle. And those are the things that we're getting to. And that's what we call church. That's what we call healthy church.
That's just out of Acts 2:36-47. Just
just the basics, what we see in Scripture.
Things that the church does.
Yeah, no more, no less. And those are things that are transferable, that's reproducible. And so then it's just a matter of helping our nationals. We just really, about 2 years ago, we went through like a 4-day process, and we just okay, what does it look like to do communion in a camp? What does it look like to do communion in an apartment building where there's 20 other Muslims around? What does it look like to do communion in a ministry building? What does it look like to do communion in an apartment when somebody has their own apartment? And so just really try to, because it runs, there's groups and churches in all of those contexts. And, our Iraqi Kurdish brother just started a church in a refugee camp on an island. So, okay, what's it look like there? Much different. I mean, they're meeting in a tent.
At least on an island, it's easier to find water for baptism.
Yeah, there no problems there. We don't have to struggle with water here for sure. And then then you've got others that are they might be able to use a ministry facility that somebody during the week is using it for aid. They're able to come in on a Thursday night at 7 and actually have church there. We also have, this is one of the things I was kind of talking about, just the difference. Like when we were in South Asia, we're up in the Himalayas. I mean, obviously that's third world, it's poor, but they still had a home. They still had land, at least the people that we were working with. Here with refugees, they don't have anything. And there are those cases where it's not safe for them to do church in a camp. It's not safe for them to do church in their apartment because it's a government-run facility and there's 100 other Muslim families there. So we've tried to create some environments where they can do church in a way that they'll be able to reproduce when they get to Germany, let's say. So basically what we've done is we've rented apartments, and we really just kind of have the living room area set up where a group can meet in there and do church. And that's something, that we just feel that's the best way that we can prepare them for what they're going to experience. Let's say whenever they get to Germany, odds are they're not going to be in a city where there's a ministry building like they're a part of here in Athens. Mm-hmm. So we got to prepare them for whatever they're going to experience wherever they go. And so that's kind of the way we've been able to do that, is just, provide a couple of those places. But we just keep it basic, we keep it simple, something that we feel like they'll be able to reproduce, whenever they move on. Or now you're starting to see more and more refugees that, make that transition to immigrant, and now they choose to stay, actually get a Greek passport. And so they're a little bit more stable. They're, they find work, and so they rent their own apartment. And so we're just kind of bridging that gap, I guess, as best we can, until they can create their own space to do it.
So you're looking at the movement of the refugees and seeing, sometimes we've only got 6 or 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And if they come to know Christ, we've got to give them the essentials of what they need to be a disciple and form church wherever they go. Mm-hmm. And right. Then sometimes you've got a longer period of time with them, but it's the same essentials. And right. You're thinking, okay, quite a high percentage of these people will be moving throughout Europe.
Right.
So how do you help them take what they've learnt and live it and do it in, when they're in Berlin or in Paris or wherever they might be?
Yeah, just sticking to the key principles of keep it simple and reproducible, and something that's already reproducing. So having even our initial lessons that are it's basically the 7 commands. We just do it a little bit different. So you've got those basic things you want everybody to walk through. Well, in certain cases, we're going to mix that up and maybe do suffering first, or, others, we would just jump right into baptism, and just everywhere in between. So, first of all, being flexible with, it doesn't have to necessarily go from point A to point Z, in that order. And you just have to be okay with that. So at the end of the day, if, for example, if we only have 8 days with somebody, which happens, not that they're come in their first day and then they're gone in 8 days. It's maybe they don't come to faith until later in their refugee journey, and they're about to leave the country, whatever. Okay, what are you going to give them? So we want to make sure that they know how to share their story, share the story, and how to be in the Word. Because we know that if they're in the Word, they're going to read all the 7 commands. And initially get to that. So we try to bridge that a little bit. We developed an app that we can just, they can put on their phone, and it's got all the discipleship lessons in their language, in their heart language, that they can watch these videos as they continue their journey. Mm. And, just the reality is we usually lose touch with about 80% that move on. Yeah. Just what it is. And, the 20% that we are able to maintain some communication with, I'd say it's about 10% of those that when they land, they understand that it's their responsibility to start, reaching out. They are the church. Yeah. And so that's really that 10%. I mean, that's a rough estimate, but, that really those select few, which is, typical. That's who we got to focus our effort on, downstream. And so we'll send so the nationals that we work with here, they're all legal. They all have passports, Greek passports now, so they're free to travel anywhere in Europe. Mm-hmm. So we'll send them to some of these guys that are starting to see some fruit. Yeah. For example, we had a guy that really he was a Persian brother that we lost touch with for almost a year. Mm-hmm. They lose their phone, or they switch phone numbers, or something happens, whatever. So really, we have to rely on those that kind of get back in contact with us once they get settled somewhere. And that's we can use that as a filter sometimes. Those that really want to stay connected, really want to do work wherever they go, they'll make contact whenever they land. Mm-hmm. So, we had a brother that contacted back our Persian leader here and said, "Hey, do you remember me?" Yes, of course. hey, we've landed he's in Austria. Praise the Lord, brother. We're excited for you. Listen, I've got 14 people that came to faith, and, we're meeting in my apartment now, but I don't know what to do. He was one of those guys that he wasn't here long enough to experience what does it look like, to go from point A to point Z, experience healthy church. So, hey, we buy our brother a plane ticket and we send him out there to spend 2 weeks with him. Yeah. And so that's just it's kind of how we're doing it right now. Just, when we have those guys that are hungry for it, that want it, we'll fly our guys up there and let them, you call it a mid-level if you want to call it that, or, adding fuel to the fire or whatever. But, really just try to take people that almost everybody that leaves, I'll just put it this way, they've missed something along the way. It's just not pretty here. There's just very few people that get through the whole process of, coming to faith, going through a short-term discipleship process, leading into a long-term discipleship process where they get to experience healthy church for, 6 months before they leave. That's like ideal, and that's perfect, but that usually doesn't happen.
Okay. And so really, this ministry has a Europe-wide impact. And I would imagine it's also having an impact through, through the internet back to their home countries, places like Iran and Iraq and elsewhere. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, we call it Skypleship.
Okay.
Skypleship, yeah. So we've got a couple of our guys in particular. They now have a network, and some of them they have more fruit through that, lots of different stories, but, just different ways that they can get Christian content into Muslim countries via Facebook or a website. And then they just filter out all of the nasty responses, and they just look for the people that are really interested. And then they can begin a dialogue there, and then set up Skype calls. And then, we've got brothers that have discipleship groups that they disciple through Skype in 4 or 5 other countries. And so it's just, some of them are, like Ireland and Denmark and Germany, but then back into Turkey now, back into Iran, back into Afghanistan. And then at that point, really the only limitation is internet, internet speed and things like that. But that's just the reality of it. But there are certainly ways to get back into country without having to go back there.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the ways where, so as much as that we can do, awesome.
Where's this going, Will? What's God put on your heart?
Yeah, we want to see a movement of healthy churches all throughout Europe. And, we really feel that, among refugees, among Europeans, and we just really feel blessed that we're in a city that we really feel like can be, just because of where it is geographically along the refugee highway, it's just such a rare opportunity that you're not going to be able to keep people. They are going to move on, and they don't know where they're going. So we just kind of trust it to the Spirit that He's going to send these people to where He wants them to be. And our role, our responsibility here is to give them as much as we can for the time that we have them. And, when they go, we pray that we're able to connect with those that are really passionate and end up seeing fruit there, so we can, continue to feed into that. And, we just believe that, for one, God is at work among Muslims. I think nobody can deny that. And we want to see a movement of healthy churches among Muslim background believers all throughout Europe. But, man, we just believe that if God's at work in such great ways among Muslims, why can't He be at work the same way among Europeans? We just believe that He is. And so we just got to find those.